Hello and welcome to the Genuine Learning Blog. My name is Melissa Galasso, and I'm very excited to be here to talk about something near and dear to my heart, audit quality. So back in 2023, the DOL, the Department of Labor, issued their audit quality study report. And this came out of the Office of the Chief Accountant from the Employee Benefit Security Administration. So the US DOL has responsibility for ERISA audits, right? And this is their fourth assessment of audit quality that's been done over the last few years. And it looks to make sure and review what are the issues that are happening with independent, qualified public accountants. And it focuses on financial statement audits, and this year particularly around the filing year of 2020, which were planned years that begin in 2020. So a little bit of background here. This was issued in November of 2023. And as I said, it's the fourth time DOL has done this. We were actually waiting for it. We've talked about this a couple of times at the AICPA council meetings, wanting to know what was going to come out of this study. So previous studies were performed in 1997, 2004, and the most recent one was 2015. And they indicated that the reason that they picked 2020 for their review, and makes sense, SAS 136, which is forming an opinion and reporting on financial statements of employee benefit plans subject to ERISA, was going to make significant changes to the report. And so instead of picking a year where there was significant change, they tried to pick a year where it was business as usual. So what did they do? So they looked at a statistically valid sample of 307 plan audits, and they did their review between December 21st and October 22nd. And the way they did this is to ensure coverage. They put them into different categories. So the first one they called simple, which would be your 401ks and 403bs, right? Your defined contribution plans. And then those that were complex, which would be your defined benefit plans, your ESOPs, the employee stock ownership plans, and then those health and welfare plans. And so complex versus simple in order to get proper coverage. Now, they did look at some interesting facts, in my opinion. The number of plan audits did increase since 2011, so it was up about 7%. However, over the same period, the number of CPA firms performing those dropped, right? We have a supply and demand issue, right? Demand is increasing, and the number of CPAs doing the work fell 40%. However, what they were very interested in and what they felt was a positive indicator was that firms that were only doing 1 to 2 plan audits a year decreased from 3684 to 1729, representing now 40% of total firms instead of 50% from their previous study. So this is important because one of the big things that has been consistent among all the quality studies is that when you do 1 to 2 of these very specialized plans, audit quality is not as good as those firms who do hundreds plus of the same plans. And so when you are decided to just, 1 or 2 is just not enough, I'm going to get out of this altogether, it actually works in favor of audit quality. So what were the findings? Well, they weren't great. They were better, but they weren't great. 70% of audits fully complied, which is what we're looking for, but 30% contained major deficiencies, and that puts $927 billion of people's 401ks, 403bs, et cetera, at risk. And so that dollar amount is an increase over prior studies. So as we look at this, 3 out of 10 basically contain major deficiencies to 1 or more GAS standards as we look at this. And so obviously there's concern by the DOL. So here's a little bit of information on the trend. As you can see, it was an improvement. When we look at the number from 2015, it did fall. So from 2004 to 2015's report, and again, the years that the report comes out is not the year necessarily that they did it. So the 2015 report had 39% of the items selected, the sample, contained a major deficiency, whereas we've dropped it down now to 30, but still, that's still very high, right? When nearly one third of all plans don't meet the professional standards. In addition, when we look at the deficiency rates by strata, those that do 1 to 2 plans have the highest deficiency rate, right? So 70%. And so we know it's very hard to do anything really well until you get repetition. And so doing 1 to 2 of these have the highest one. And when you do 100 more, as you can see here, we get a lot more efficiency. So as we look at this, the firms who do 6 to 24 in that strata there, they were significantly lower in terms of prior year from the 2015 study. They actually had a deficiency that's statistical. However, all the other stratas did not have a statistically different amount than previous years. So what did we learn? Well, obviously, there's a clear link between the number of employee benefit plan audits a firm does and audit quality. And one of the more interesting ones, which I think is pretty consistent if you were to talk to people who work in the government space as well, audits performed by firms that are members of the Employee Benefit Audit Quality Center, which is an AICPA additional membership, had significantly lower deficiency rates. These firms care about quality, they're willing to pay for membership, and they want to do a good job. So in that scenario, that was an outcome there. In terms of the where we had multiple deficiencies, so sometimes a firm may have only had one audit, may have only had one, right, in terms of a major deficiency. However, there were some that had multiple deficiencies, and as you can see here, some that had 5 or more major deficiencies. And so again, I think it's just important to be able to compare where we're seeing these issues. So one of the things I thought was very interesting in this is they make a very bold statement that peer review and practicing monitoring efforts, right, so internal inspections, what's done by the AICPA, do not help identify deficient plan audits. And that is an explicit statement there. They believe that the Audit Quality Center is helpful. They believe doing multiple ones, but they have not seen peer review identify. And there are some statistics, right? So from the same period, when we look at peer review, right, we're not getting the same deficiency rate, right? So in this scenario, firms received a clean peer review report, even though there were deficiencies in their employee benefit plans. And so again, there's something that's not working here that we need to really address. But as we look, right, there were 222 unique firms, 307 audits, but some firms had more than one audit selected in this sample. 191 or 86% of them are members of the Employee Benefit Plan Audit Quality Center. And we know that membership helps improve quality. And so encouraging more firms to sign up for that would be a good outcome here. Where did we see the highest deficiency rates? Participant data, which we're not surprised by, contributions received and receivable, and benefit payments. You can see here from their report in the back where they saw additional items, right, as we go through, and we're going to take a look at that. All right, so when we look through the different types, what were some of the examples? You're like, oh, they're being picky, right? I hear that all the time. Oh, the regulators are mean. Well, no recalculation of employer and or employee contributions. No or insufficient testing of compliance with compensation provisions. No or insufficient testing of employee contributions timely remittance. No audit programs. No or insufficient required communications to management. No or insufficient review of plan documents, plan operations, contracts, or agreements. And then in the reporting, 5 of them included delinquent employee contributions were not reported or disclosed as required. In 3 instances, the audit report did not refer to the supplemental schedules, which is obviously required. And in 2 instances, an incomplete audit report was attached to the Forms 5500. So when we think about this, 12 of them had failed to comply with the reporting and disclosure requirements in ERISA as we go through. Now, I do like to point out that that's about a 4% deficiency rate, and that is a drop from the 17% deficiency rate from the previous study. Now, remember, this is before they made changes to the report, so it'll be interesting to see how the change in the report impacts us. In terms of recommendations, the DOL did put out some recommendations that the AICPA's peer review program and the EBSA should work with the AICPA to make it more transparent, disclosing when peer reviewers have identified deficiencies. Encourage the AICPA to require firms who perform benefit plan audits to receive, in addition to their required system review, an engagement review covering a sample of their benefit plan engagements. coordinate with the AICPA peer review staff to ensure that CPAs who are required to undergo peer review actually have their required peer review. And then the last one that I thought was very important here was that they should work with NASBA to encourage state boards to require specific licensing for CPAs who perform EBP audits, including specific training and experience. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of this in the government world. In certain states, you have to be on an approved list that's held by the state in order to do that work. So this would not be the first time anyone had proposed that. It's actually very popular in other industries, and so maybe that's something we can consider here as well. All right, so that's a wrap this week on the Genuine Learning blog. Hopefully you take a closer look. There's a lot more data. They have a lot of really great illustrations in there. So I highly recommend, especially if you work in the employee benefit world, that you take a closer look at what's going on with respect to audit quality. Maybe do a quick training with your staff, reminding them of what we're finding, because we can always learn from others, and that's the best form of learning. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I hope to see you on a future blog. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.